Hey guys, welcome to Document Right. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to conduct great user interviews. Let's start off with why you'd want to do user interviews. So many teams struggle with writing good documentation, and a big part of the problem is knowing what kind of documentation to focus on. User interviews are a great way to find out what kind of documentation you should write. User interviews need to be done right in order to yield valuable insights. Otherwise, they'll lead you down the wrong path and you'll end up with documentation that's worse than before you started. So, when you want to run a great user interview, there are quite a few steps that you need to follow, and they're divided into different sections. So first, there's the preparation that you do before the interview, what you do during the interview, and then after the interview, how you wrap things up. So before the interview, you need to take the following steps. Step 1 is you want to set clear goals for what you want to achieve from your user interviews. For example, you may want to answer the question why your Getting Started guide has an 80% bounce rate. So some guiding questions you should ask yourself: what do you need to know about your users? And how will that knowledge improve your documentation and inform your writing process? Step number 2 is you want to ensure that an interview is the correct tool for achieving your objective. There are alternative tools for gathering such data. For example, you could conduct a survey or go through analytics data. Step 3 is you may want to get someone to help you prepare for and conduct the interview. A second person could assist with planning for the interview, they can assist while conducting the interview, and they could also help you with interpreting the results. Step 4 is you want to select an interview method. Your interviews could be conducted in person or remotely, and there are pros and cons to both of those. For instance, face-to-face interviews have the advantage of better communication because you can see the body language of the other person. But then on the downside, in-person interviews are more difficult to organize and it's more time-consuming because you have to get everyone in the same room at the same time. Whereas with remote, you don't have as much benefit in terms of body language, but at the same time, it's easier and less time-consuming to organize a remote interview. Step 5 is you want to select your interview subjects. You want to make sure that the people you choose for the interviews are a representative sample of your larger user base. You want to look at certain criteria like the skill level of the user's demographics, and as well the use case for which they are using your application. Step 6 is you want to prepare your discussion guide. So the discussion guide is basically a list of questions that you would like to ask during the interview. When coming up with your questions, you should keep in mind the following. You want to ask clear and concise questions. You don't want to ask leading questions that lead the user into answering in a specific way. And you also want to avoid jargon, acronyms, and geek speak. Step 7, which is a bonus optional step, is you may want to include a short exercise. So this is a task that requires the user to refer to your documentation. And this is really helpful because it helps you observe your users using the documentation in real time. Okay, now that you've got prepared for the interview, it's now time to conduct it. So step 1 is you want to put yourself in a positive mood. You want to take a deep breath and smile. This will help your interviewee feel more comfortable. User interviews work best when the subject is relaxed and comfortable. Step 2, also on the issue of making the interviewee comfortable, you want to introduce yourself and then explain the purpose of the interview. Knowing what to expect will help your subject become more comfortable. Step 3 is you want to use your prepared discussion guide. However, be flexible. Don't hesitate to go in a new direction if you feel it is necessary. Step 4 is you want to start off with easy questions. For example, you could ask, tell me about your role and your day-to-day tasks. Could you tell me about a feature you use often and why you do so? Easy questions are general questions that are not product specific that any user could answer. Step 5 is be curious about your participants' perspective. Ask follow-up and clarifying questions. Do not assume anything. Step 6 is you want to prioritize open-ended questions. So these are questions that can't be answered by a yes or a no or a single word answer, and they require, a lengthier response. And usually open-ended questions start with why and how. So for example, you could ask, what is the most confusing part of the documentation for you and why? Step 7 is you want to keep an eye out for non-verbal cues. Pay attention to the participants' body language. Are they fidgeting? Do they seem tense? Do they have a confused look on their face? Step 8 is you want to make sure to take notes and/or record a video. This is also where an assistant will be very useful. You could delegate note-taking to them while you focus on asking the questions. Be sure to always ask for permission before recording. Okay, so we're done with the interview. Now here's what we need to do after the interview. Step 1 is you want to conduct a retrospective. You'll have a brief discussion on how the interview went with your assistant and also summarize the key points that you got from the user. Step 2 is you want to structure the data that you collected during the interview. Organize it logically according to the goals that you set out in the beginning. Next, you want to interpret your results. What does it all mean? And also you want to validate your results using other research methods. For example, analytics and surveys. This is very important because you want to make sure that the insights that you gained from these user interviews are in fact valid. And lastly, you want to make sure that you sharpen the saw. Improve the process for future user interviews. So you want to ask yourself, what went well, what went wrong, and where can improvements be made? This is absolutely critical so that each successive interview is better than the last. Congratulations! You are now ready to conduct a great user interview. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.